Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is the hospital that I went to numerous times seeking emergency medical treatment when I first overloaded with carbon monoxide in January of 2018. I did come here once the source was known and everything came out at the restaurant and who caused my injury and what had actually been going on and what had happened, who caused everything. I came here and it now says Corewell Health up top, but this was Beaumont Hospital for quite some time, for many decades. Recently they changed their name to Corewell Health, but this was the Beaumont, Trenton, Michigan location. And I came to this location that day. It wasn't even questionable at that point what was wrong with me and the continuous severe symptoms I was experiencing. They booted me from the hospital, drew my blood and said that that's not what I had. And tried to tell me that where my head hurts, it's in the wrong spot. They weren't understanding that I was completely overloaded. It had already broken through my brain, leaving me unconscious and dead for 4 hours in my bed. And then it was past the point of no return. I had crossed the threshold and the entire blood-brain barrier had busted through. So they were not even letting me explain what happened. I didn't have anybody to advocate for me. There was just people badgering me, telling me that there was nothing wrong with me. And the day that happened, it took me about 30 minutes. I sat right here in my vehicle in this parking lot, and the door is right over there. It took me about 5-10 minutes to walk from that door to my vehicle where I'm standing right now. And because I could barely stand up, I could barely move, I couldn't communicate. And then I sat in my vehicle for 20-30 minutes before I drove home from here, which is 5 minutes away. And I was not in a place, I couldn't even get there because I was so severely injured and suffering in an extreme manner, in extreme pain, and all those symptoms, 50, 60 severe symptoms at once, all going on. So this is where I went, where that happened. And then I came back here. Mind you, I did say I did not have treatment for 14 months, which I finally began at a private center in March of 2019. So all that time I went with no treatment, and I was having all these small re-exposures and kept having ongoing issues. And it was basically happening to the degree where the walls were closing in on me. And if we did not receive treatment, I knew we weren't going to live. So there was several significant re-exposures. There was a chemical spill at this time, months later. This was, I believe, September of 2018. And I found this out after the fact. There was a chemical spill, which was making matters worse at that time. I just did not know that was going on until after the fact. So I was brought back here. I took myself here in September of 2018, and again a month later in October of 2018. And the first time in September, the doctor did understand that I was poisoned by carbon monoxide. It was not questionable. I had never received treatment. And that particular day, I'd actually hit my head at work while struggling to try to work. When I could not stand up and my brain was so loose in my head, I was falling all the time. So it was extremely dangerous doing what I was doing. And I'd hit my head so hard that I knocked loose so many extra carbon monoxide particles that I knew I was really close to death. So that's what prompted me to come here in September of 2018. Now that doctor did seem to understand what I was saying, and he did give me about an hour of oxygen, regular oxygen. And at that time, I did not know the extreme degree how severe the poisoning actually was at that time. I did not come to figure this out until I was probably about 60 treatments in, once I realized I was barely scratching the surface once I was at the hyperbaric facility. So that little hour of oxygen actually it helped a little bit, but it actually did me no good because I was so overloaded. I needed years and years of everyday treatment with a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, not regular oxygen. So that doctor did tell me to come back here if that happened to me again. But my symptoms were ongoing, continuous. There was no break from them. Nobody was realizing that. And due to that chemical spill that was lingering at that time, I had more ongoing effects than I would normally have. But I came back here as he had directed me to do. And I specifically asked for him and told them that he told me I could come back here. And then I was rudely spoken to by, I believe I don't know if she's a nurse practitioner, or exactly who she is, but her name is Susan Horling, and she was on duty that day. And she had read some false information that was in my medical chart, about me that my mother had pulled a different doctor aside earlier that year, and that lady had entered some false information in my medical chart. So that lady, when I came here in October of 2018, she had seen this false information and was saying things about whatever was written in the chart in that specific doctor visit that I had, where my mother had inserted herself and had given them false information about me. So she was acting like I actually had a mental disorder, that there was no carbon monoxide poisoning, that I needed to go back to this doctor that I'd seen that one time. She was acting like this was my primary doctor or something. And this woman I'd only seen one time. She was supposed to be some type of occupational health hazard doctor, which she had no knowledge of the subject of carbon monoxide at all. So wrong doctor altogether. I had no intention of ever going back there. She's no help. I was actually, her office was in a hospital, in the main Beaumont hospital in Dearborn, and I was not receiving treatment. So I ended up, not getting treatment that day. That day my mother inserted herself, and then I also did not get treatment that day in October in 2018 when I came here. So they chased me out of the hospital, acted like I had some severe mental disorder when I was really suffering from severe carbon monoxide poisoning and 2 severe brain injuries at this point, to the point where I could not communicate properly. And usually when I would try, if it got so bad that I was trying to seek treatment, I was in an extreme state. So it looks like a mental disorder. When you're seeing somebody with extreme carbon monoxide poisoning with brain injuries, it appears as if it's a mental disorder. It is not at all a mental disorder. It is a physical injury to the brain and the system. And I was basically chased out of this hospital, and they were attempting to hold me against my will, acting like I don't know what I'm talking about and have a problem. So I ended up going to a different hospital. I went to Henry Ford after this, and they did end up giving me a little bit of treatment, a little bit of oxygen that day. Just a little bit, enough to kind of it was still extreme, but it did get me a step forward. Now the problem is I was not receiving regular treatment all during this time. So there's several issues here, because the problem is going to continue ongoing with no proper treatment. So later down the line, after I find the center and I begin treating daily for years, so this had been over 2 years I've been treating, and in May of 2021 I was brought back here by the police in my city, Flat Rock Police Department. And after I was falsely arrested from my home, my ex had cracked my head off my garage floor in the same spot that was swelling and sagging for those 34 and a half months. Now, because that spot had just gotten repaired with all the hyperbaric oxygen, and all my brain tissue was extremely fragile, all my cells extremely fragile still under daily treatment when that incident occurred. The police were called, and because my deranged mother was in the background placing phone calls to my city's police department, they believed that I had this ongoing mental disorder. The cops had been at my house numerous times since my injury, but that's all due to my mother's manipulation and pumping the people up around me full of delusions, that 911 kept getting called. And every time it looked like I was the problem, when in actuality, that's my house. I pay all the bills, and I was extremely injured, suffering, homebound, not knowing at that point, I was not knowing if I was ever going to leave the 4 walls of my house. So I got taken to jail, falsely arrested. They believed it was my ex's house. He had been moved out for quite some time at this point. He doesn't pay child support. He did not pay any bills. But they believed, because of my mother's phone call, that was his house, and that I was to be removed. So they tried to remove me from my home permanently, and Sergeant Wilczynski is the one who, he told my ex, oh, she's never coming back, don't worry about her. That's funny, because that's not his house. He doesn't live there, doesn't pay bills there, nor could he afford to pay the bills in that home. And everything is mine, and the work is mine, the house is, everything was mine. So it made no sense. And each incident that happened along the way, this is what helped piece together what my mother had been doing all these decades. So the proof, ended up kind of coming out along the way. So they brought me back here. Once I said there wasn't a problem, I needed to go to the hospital because I could feel that spot opening up, and it was swelling up more and more and more. And mind you, they also took my pain medication away that I needed daily, because I'm in continuous pain from the initial injury. And then my head was hit, so it was swelling up and swelling up and swelling up. So that incident actually reversed over $100,000 in the treatments that I had done, and significantly significantly re-injured my brain, because before that day, the entire brain tissue from the back, the sides, all the way up, it was starting to become all the way sealed, all the way to the front of my forehead. So that day, not only did they take me here to this hospital, where the hospital sided with the police and acted like there was nothing wrong with me. And I'm telling them, I'm a patient at a private center. You need to contact my care team. I'm under daily treatment. It's being treated as an outpatient situation, and this is not an outpatient situation. I am homebound. And because they covered up the initial injury in 2018, they sided with the police and acted like there was nothing wrong with me and sent me out of here back in the police custody. And then the police pulled their cars in and out of the garage at the police station numerous times that night while they had me in custody. And I can't have any amount of carbon monoxide, not even 1 part per million. So it blew all of my brain tissue open. It disintegrated everything all the way back to about here. And then it was pressing, trying to break through the rest of it for several days. And I lifted something heavy, and it did break all the way back through toward the back of my head. So it did I was still under daily treatment at that point for about another 2 months before I had to start self-paying, and dropped it down to about 2 days a week. And so I got a little bit of it removed and repaired, but where I am today is still not where I was that day in 2021. So they did a significant amount of damage between this hospital making up lies, not looking into the private center or contacting my actual care team, continue on with the cover-up, siding with the police who arrested me on false pretenses. It all played a role. So again, I'm not where I was. I'm still not where I was before that day. Now, in June of 2023, I was not far from here. I was down the street at Walmart with my younger son, who's poisoned with me, and there was wildfire particles in the air at that time, and those wildfire particles were lethal to us. I had spent too much time traveling from point A to point B. I fell over at Walmart in the aisleway, cracked my head open, and was dead, completely unresponsive for 15 minutes, bleeding from the head. Open head wound, lost several pints of blood. I came back on my own without medical intervention, and when I came to, the EMTs were standing there, so were several customers that were in the aisle with me at Walmart, and so was the manager, and my ex was standing there because my son had called his dad to come get him, thinking I was dead. Initially, I was not with it when I first came to on the floor in the puddle of blood. I tried to say I was fine and I didn't need an ambulance, and the reason I was saying that is because I knew that the hospital was not going to treat me. And I was not in a place to go anywhere really. So I finally agreed to get on the stretcher, got on the stretcher, and lost consciousness again, but came to in the ambulance long enough to tell the EMT that I needed oxygen, and I've been under treatment for severe carbon monoxide poisoning at a private facility for years. So he did give me the oxygen. However, I was still unconscious when I was brought right back here again at this location into the emergency room, and they were so busy that I was actually on the stretcher in the hallway, so I didn't have a room at first. I was pretty out of it for about an hour. And I was covered in blood from head to toe, had an open head wound. Nobody assessed me. Nobody tried to help me. Nobody wanted to contact my care team again. They acted as if none of that had happened to me, and they're still on the initial cover-up of what they did to me on the initial injury. So I received no treatment after being dead for 15 minutes unresponsive, brought in with the open head wound, lost all that blood, and was kicked right out onto the street shortly after. Well, I'd probably been here about an hour, but I was kicked right out onto the street. And I have my own head wrap, and I have my own pain pills. So basically by this time my daughter was here with me. My kids did have to come get my car from the Walmart parking lot. And then my daughter met me at the hospital. So as soon as that happened, I just said, you know what, we're leaving, that's it. So really, this place needs to be sued. They're on a large-scale cover-up. This was the employer of my mother for 45 years. Again, it was not Corewell Health back then. It was Beaumont. They just made the name change recently. So I don't know if that has anything to do with my situation and what's been going on, but I suspect that it could, especially because my mother is their employee. But I will be back to talk about more of this. It is really cold outside. Thanks, bye.